Hi there. How's everybody doing? Can you guys hear me all right? The one person who can respond. Great. Thank you, Josh, for the intro. Josh is too kind, too kind. And it's an honor to be introed by Josh, honestly. So my sobriety date is 5/25/2018. Um, let's see, we got about 20 minutes here. So this is a really, really cool meeting. Lots of people, the ASL translation. You guys have this down to a science with the readings and everything. It's really great to see. And it's it's great to be here. I haven't been to a Zoom meeting in quite a while, kind of since the COVID days. But I think for me, I'll kind of pick a topic, but I'll kind of share a bit about my alcoholism and what it was like to get sober and just like how the topic relates and things like that. And really, for me, the alcoholism kind of set in pretty early in my life. I was in grade school and I just kind of felt like this girl that I liked was holding hands with another boy in like second grade or something, and I just hated myself. And I was just like, wow, I hate them and I feel weird and everyone's looking at me and everyone else is weird and I feel weird in my skin. And then like I just had these tons of thoughts about everyone. And not only did I have all these thoughts about everyone, but I had these feelings, and like my feelings just felt super intense. And that was like a pretty crazy experience to be going through in like second grade. And a couple important things is like, I, from the second grade until I got sober and even being sober, I didn't think anyone else was experiencing life the way I was, like I'm this, like what I'm going through right now is very unique. And like, even if like someone pretends like they know or whatever it is, like I just don't believe them and like you just don't get it. And then the other thing is that like what I was experiencing in the second grade, just like tons of crazy alcoholism, ego voice in my head going crazy, all these feelings, uncomfortability, I can't breathe, all of this, like a drink in that moment would have solved, would have fixed what was going on. And I think that's super, super important for me to remember that like the alcohol will solve my alcoholism. And I didn't get to have a drink until much, much later. And the funny thing about alcohol, uh, well, really quick, I think what I'll just to kind of sum up that experience in the second grade with my alcoholism, I felt like that was like the day that like my alcoholism and the crazy in my brain woke up. Um, and it never really subsided, or I never really had a good time with like the crazy in my brain until I started drinking. And I was alone in that. So I'm pretty much just like alone and afraid. And the big thing is like I'm trying not to be alone and afraid. And I don't know how to make myself not alone and afraid. But alcohol works really well with just making it not matter. And the funny thing is, alcohol does that for me while simultaneously, like physically, when I drink alcohol, I have this like allergic reaction where there's my cat. I have this allergic reaction to where I have this phenomenon of craving of like where I want more and more and more, right? Um, and that's pretty much like alcoholism summed up is like this crazy mental obsession. Um, and alcohol fixes this crazy mental obsession and subsides this crazy alone afraidness that I have. However, I put alcohol in my body and it just triggers this allergic reaction where I have this phenomenon of craving of where I want more and more. And it's not just more like, wow, that was a good cupcake, I want another one. It's like more to where it's like I'm willing to rob my mom or my friends or steal or ABCD to get more, right? Um, and then there's this idea of like, well, finding something greater than this alcohol uh, might help you. But then there's like the spiritual malady, which is like, well, I'm cut off from something greater, like I'm blocked. That's what like the spiritual malady says. It says we're blocked off from the some of the spirit, right? So it's kind of like a recipe for disaster. Alcoholism. It's just a recipe for disaster. The one thing that helps my crazy. Um, I have a phenomenon of craving of where I want more, and then any sort of spirituality that might help me, I'm blocked off from it. I have this spiritual malady. So it's just kind of like well, what do I do? And the crazy thing is like none of these thoughts were going in my head from my first drink until my last. Like I just thought the world was against me, and I just thought like all the big people and the cops and the therapists and the psychiatrists and the parents and the schools, like I just thought all of them were out to get me. Um, and have like a big adverse reaction to responsibility as well, which I kind of still do sometimes today. But so this little idea, this little description of alcoholism that I just talked about, like no one ever told me about that. And the biggest thing is like no one ever sat down and told me their story, like told me like, hey, this is like what it's like for me with alcoholism and with crazy and when I drink. What they would just tell me is like, stop drinking, be better, do better in school, stop robbing your mother, stop doing that, right? They would just tell me to stop, but no one ever like sat down and told me their experience and gave me something to like relate to, And when I finally got that, it was crazy. I was just like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like I remember I was in treatment. So eventually, whatever, you get arrested, treatment, all this stuff. Was sitting in treatment, and he's like this big Australian guy. I'm like a short little brown boy, and he's like this huge Australian guy. So we're like completely different. But he just told me his experience with drugs and alcohol. He told me his experience in his head and his crazy and the things he would do for drugs and alcohol and the way he saw the world and all this stuff. And I was just like, what? Like me too? What? And it was like the first time in my life where I felt like I could say me too to someone, like, oh, like I get that. And that's like so important. That's like the thing that's going to keep me have even the slightest bit of open-mindedness to maybe take a suggestion, right? So that maybe I have an experience at a meeting because I took a suggestion and I'm like, maybe this thing will work, right? Like, and it all just came from like hearing someone else's experience with alcoholism and the crazy. And then when I start to hear someone else's experience with the solution, I mean, that's where it really starts to get crazy because that's when I start to have a step two. And I'm like, wait, maybe I do believe that like there's a power that can restore me to sanity because like it kind of looks like it worked for you. And I really relate to you and you're crazy. Um, and yeah, so that's kind of like what it was like and just alcoholism and getting sober. And really, when I first got sober, like I didn't really care about what happened. I was just like, yeah, I'll kind of do what they say. And I had some step one experiences, but it never was like, I want to stay sober forever. Like if you would ask me honestly, I would have told you like, yeah, I'll probably drink again on the weekends in 6 months, but like I'm down to hang out with these people for now. But the key was like I was open minded a little bit and I was like willing and honest. Like, and it wasn't a lot. It wasn't like this, like, oh my God, I'm a saint who's so open and willing and honest. It was just like I'm willing to be a little bit willing to be a little bit honest, and willing to be a little bit open. But that was enough because having those things meant I took a little bit of action. Taking a little bit of action meant like I got to have an experience. And that's really what I need. Like I need to start having experiences doing these steps that bring me towards a relationship to a power greater than myself. And like I need to have experiences greater than alcohol. Because like if I'm not going to have it, and I don't mean better than alcohol, I don't mean like experiences that feel better. Like it's like just an overall greater experience than alcohol. Because if not, like I'm just going to go back to alcohol, like if I don't find a power greater, I'm going to go to the power that works, right? And alcohol will work. And I think a big thing that happened for me in my sobriety is I kind of started to like think about step one a little bit differently and start to think like, oh, I'm not waking up choosing to be sober and things like that. Like if I lack the power to stay sober, then like if I'm staying sober, it's not because of my power. So like I'm still powerless today. And the only time I ever seek power is if I admit powerlessness. Like, how am I going to go seek this power in the morning and go do 11-step stuff and go seek a relationship with a power greater? Like, how am I going to go and do that if subconsciously or like behind it all, like I think I have some sort of like power or I think this is about me, So I've realized that like I can't just jump to like roses with God. Like I have to kind of admit my own faults and humanness and powerlessness kind of every day. And that like opens me up to like having an experience, every morning or throughout the day or whatever it is. So I started to just kind of realize that like every experience I'm going to have in AA, every experience I'm going to have with these steps kind of hinges on like, do I still believe that I'm powerless and that my life is unmanageable? Like, am I willing to admit that today? Not fucking 7 years ago or 15 years ago or whatever it is, but like today, you know? Because it's easy for me to admit, like, yeah, I'm powerless when I drink. It's easy to admit, like, yeah, my life's unmanageable when I first got sober. But like today, being able to admit like powerlessness and unmanageability, it can be kind of hard. Like the voice, ego in my head, that's not what it's thinking about. It's not thinking about a humble admittance of powerlessness and unmanageability, which then puts me in a place to seek a power greater. Like that's not what my head goes to in the mornings. That's not what my head goes through throughout the day. It goes to all sorts of other things, either thinking about trying to figure things out, trying to manage life, thinking about them and it and this. And that actually leads me to what I wanted to talk about a bit today, which is kind of like throughout the day. Because what I've realized a lot recently and just something I've been experiencing is like just all the thoughts that are going on throughout the day. And for me, when I open the big book and I read pages 84 to 88, something that really stands out to me is how many times it talks about our thoughts. And the reason I think that's really important is because it says earlier in the big book that the main problem centers in our mind, right? And that really helps me out because I start to default think that like the main problem centers in all of you guys and centers in like the work and the job and the girl and the this and the that. Like that's where the main problem is. But when I start to be open to being responsible, like I'm responsible. Like the main problem centers in my mind, and what goes on in my mind is thoughts. And I think that that's interesting because later on in the big book, in steps 10 and 11, it talks a lot about turning our thoughts, and it talks a lot about like what are we going to do throughout the day with all these freaking thoughts, you know? And when I really started to get into like those pages in the big book, like 84 to 88, I was like, wow, this is like the design for living. Like this is like the whole point of steps 1, 2, 3, going into a 4 and 5 and a 6 and 7 and doing 8 and 9 and still doing 9 and finishing 9. Like it gets me into this place of 10 and 11 where I'm like building this relationship with a power that's going to keep me sober and keep me living up to my sex ideal. And it's going to keep me in step 12, practicing my step 12 with others, right? It's like, you know, pages 84 to 88, like just describe like what to do throughout the day. And I'm really happy that a lot of it talked about like what to do with our thoughts and what to do when we got aggravated or annoyed or it says a few different things, but like because that's all I would experience throughout the day. First few years sober, today, tomorrow, like I'll just suddenly get annoyed or aggravated or bothered or have this thought about what's this person doing, or have this thought about what that person said was so stupid earlier. Like, why would they even say that? I mean, what is, you know what I mean? And I just like, I have this blind spot and I just start thinking. And the thoughts aren't very outward. They aren't very, you know, selfless. They aren't very inspired. They're very, you know, finger pointing, very victim-y. And so I wanted to read a couple pages from the good old big book. Just a few times where like it talks about our thoughts. And so like at the bottom of page 84, after doing like a 10 step where it says we watch for like selfishness, resentment, or fear. At the end of like a few of those lines, it says, then we resolutely turn our thoughts, right? And then later on as well, it says, these thoughts must go with us constantly. It's talking about like saying, how may I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. Like that thought needs to go with us constantly. And then it says our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane. And what I realized is like, okay, so I get sober, I get a home group, I start being of service and YPAA and da 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 da, and then I get all these life stuff, and then I lose a bunch of life stuff, and then I have another step 1 in sobriety without drinking, and that one like hurts more than the drinking one. That was weird. And it's just like I have all these experiences, but what I kind of have always come back to and I've always realized is that like my sobriety and my well-being and my contentment and my usefulness in the world is contingent upon my spiritual growth. And my spiritual growth is contingent upon like daily actions, kind of like daily disciplines, kind of doing different things throughout the day that actually like engage me with my higher power, right? And what's really cool is like that's pretty much all that's on the pages of page 84 to 88. Hello there, excuse me. Sorry, it's my cat. Is all these different instructions of like what to do throughout our day and at night. And we ask God for inspiration. And so for me, I think kind of like going into the topic and whatnot is I'm really curious about what it's like for other people throughout the day and all these thoughts and like what they do throughout the day. Like I've found different what I really like about AA is like it talks a lot about creating a relationship with a higher power that's personal to you. And what I realized as well is like there's a difference between like believing in God and having like a relationship with God. Like there's a difference between like believing and there's a power in the universe and all that stuff, and like having a relationship with it, talking to it, asking it for inspiration. You know what I mean? Like I realized like if AA was just about like believing in a higher power, it would just the big book would just have one page and it would just say, hey, believe in a higher power and you'll be good. But it's not. It's about like doing these actions to have a relationship with it. And the interesting thing is like the number one thing that pushes me towards a relationship with a power greater than myself is like my psychotic alcoholism. Like when my psychotic alcoholism is doing what it does, it's probably like the number one motivator to go and seek a relationship with a power and to go and try and figure out like what do I believe in and what does whatever sort of higher power think I should do in this situation or with this, or what would it have me be? Like 9 times out of 10, I'm asking those questions and I'm pausing throughout the day when agitated or doubtful. Like 9 times out of 10, it's because like my alcoholism crazy is kicking off. It's not because I'm like some saint guru that's like thinking about God all the time and things like that. So once again, for me, it does kind of go back to like the more in touch I am with my alcoholism and the problem, the more kind of like ability I have to actually seek the solution. And so, yeah, lately I've been having a lot of thoughts and I've been having a lot of pauses throughout the day. I think one of my favorite lines in that step 11 is like we as we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful, ask for the right thought or action. Like when I first read those lines in the big book, I was like, oh wait, like I can do something during the day to like not just get pissed at 11 a.m. and stay pissed throughout the whole day. I don't know. For me, when I was like a couple years sober, like that was mind blowing to me. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy. But maybe I'm just stupid and everyone knows that. I don't know. But so yeah, I think the topic for me would kind of be like the throughout the day, I guess. Like what do you do or what have you learned that like throughout the day, like when you see your alcoholism or you see crazy or you see it says here agitated or doubtful, like what is it like for you? Pausing and asking for the right thought or action. That's something that's been coming up a lot for me, you know. And it's something that'll always be there. Like I'm always gonna get agitated or get doubtful or have crazy thoughts. And in 10 years it'll be talking about something a lot different than today, and that's okay. But that's kind of what it is for a topic, just kind of what's that like for you, how's that been for you, and if that doesn't make any sense to you, then just share about your recovery today in the last 12 hours. So that's going to be my share. That's going to be my little pitch here. Thanks so much for having me. Great to see you all. I'm going to go mute now. Bye-bye.